My mom is the oldest of 6 children, and the oldest 5 are all 2 years apart from each other. So when she was in high school, about 16 or 17, she ended up doing a lot of babysitting for her younger siblings, my aunts and uncles. She was used to it by then. Long nights, keeping everyone fed, tucked in, and entertained. One winter night, she was babysitting all of them at once. The house was warm but quiet, the living room dimly lit by the glow of the old TV. Outside, the cold had settled in. A light dusting of snow covered the yard and street. The curtains were drawn back because back then it wasn't unusual to leave windows uncovered. Nobody really thought about strangers lurking outside. She told me she remembered how cozy it felt that night. The smell of popcorn, the hum of the radiator, all the kids piled together on the sofa under blankets watching TV. It was one of those rare evenings when everyone was actually calm. Then the phone rang. It was the landline in the kitchen, the kind with a long, curling cord. She got up and answered, thinking it would be her parents checking in. Instead, it was the neighbor across the street. Their voice was low and urgent. "Don't turn around," the neighbor said. "We're looking at your house right now. We can see you and the kids watching TV. We see the back of your head while you're sitting on the sofa." My mom froze. She thought it was some kind of prank at first. "Okay," she said cautiously. Then the neighbor added, "We also see a man right outside your house. He's staring directly into the window of the room you're in. Don't move, don't do anything. We've already called the cops." She told me her heart stopped. For a moment, the living room felt like it had turned to ice. All she could think about were the kids, her little brothers and sisters sitting there, completely oblivious, staring at the screen. She didn't dare look toward the window. She just nodded silently into the phone, her voice barely working when she whispered, "Okay." She hung up slowly, every muscle in her body tense. Her ears strained to hear something, footsteps, a tap on the glass, breathing. But there was only the TV and the sound of her siblings shifting on the couch. She forced a smile, trying to keep her voice calm as she told them to stay put. Then came the longest few minutes of her life. The seconds dragged. Her mind raced through what could happen. She was just a teenager, alone in a house with 5 kids, while some stranger outside watching them. She remembered thinking, what if he tries to get in? What if he already is in? Finally, through the window she couldn't see, but could feel, the red and blue lights of the police flickered against the wall. The cops pulled up quickly. By the time they got out of their cars, the man had fled. But there was snow that night, a thin layer dusting the ground. The police and the neighbors found footprints circling the house, not just by one window, by every window, as if he'd gone from room to room, staring at each one, watching. They never caught him. My mom never forgot that night. Even years later, she said she could still feel the weight of that man's presence, the sense of being watched, and the sound of her heart pounding in her ears as she tried to keep her younger siblings calm. My mom remarried about 2 years ago. My dad had died when I was 12, so she had been alone for over a decade. When she finally met someone new, the whole thing moved faster than I ever expected. 3 months from meeting to marriage. I didn't know much about the guy, but she seemed happy. She smiled more than she had in years, so I told myself to be supportive. Her new home was in upstate Virginia. It wasn't a cozy suburban house. It was this massive farmhouse surrounded by hundreds of acres of rolling fields and woods. The drive up alone felt strange. No other houses for miles, no street lights, just long stretches of winding road until the house finally appeared. It was beautiful, in a picture-perfect way, the kind of place people dream of retiring in. But instead of comfort, I felt a creeping unease the moment I stepped inside. At first, I told myself it was just nerves, maybe some hidden resentment. But the feeling didn't go away. The house had this weight to it. It wasn't anything you could point to. The rooms were bright enough, and her new husband was perfectly friendly. But there was a silence in the walls, a heaviness in the air, like the whole place was holding its breath.
Every time I walked down the hallway, the floorboards creaked as if someone was following a step behind. That first night, I couldn't relax. Even something as simple as showering turned unsettling. My fiancé and I got in together, and as the water fogged the glass, he froze mid-sentence. "What did you do to your back?" he asked. My stomach dropped. I hadn't done anything. He told me there was a huge bruise, dark and shaped like fingers pressed hard against my skin. I stared in the mirror afterward, heart pounding. It looked like someone had grabbed me, but no one had touched me. I didn't even remember bumping into anything. I tried to ignore it, but the silence that followed us into the bedroom that night was suffocating. Our window overlooked the wide, empty field outside, just blackness. No lights, no movement, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was standing out there, staring straight back at me through the glass. I finally hung a blanket over the window, only then able to crawl into bed. Even then, sleep came slow, shallow, restless. The next morning I woke up in tears. Not soft crying, full, panicked sobbing that came out of nowhere. My fiancé tried to calm me, but I couldn't stop shaking. The only thought that cut through the panic was, we need to leave. It wasn't even noon. We were supposed to stay 2 more days, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't breathe inside that house. We left, and the moment we pulled onto the main road, it felt like the air had cleared. My chest loosened. I could finally breathe again. I even started to feel embarrassed, wondering if I'd just been imagining things. Then my fiancé broke the silence. "That bruise on your back, did you really look at it?" I had, and the truth was worse than anything I wanted to admit. It looked like a tilted handprint, fingers spread wide, pressed firmly into my skin, and no one had touched me. 3 weeks later, my mom came to visit. She spent the whole trip urging me to come back, to give the house another chance. I finally told her everything, about the feeling, about the bruise, about the panic that drove me out. Before I could even finish, her face went pale. She admitted she felt it too. She hated the house. She wanted to leave. And then she told me the part that made my blood run cold. Her husband's previous wife had killed herself right there, in the very same field our window overlooked, the place I couldn't stop staring into that night. So, imagine, if you were in my place, what would be your reaction about this whole incident?
When I was a freshman in college, I was working on a film shoot near Barstow, right along Old Route 66. We were shooting at a place people sometimes recognize, the cafe from the movie Baghdad Cafe. Attached to that cafe is a long abandoned motel, and that's where we set up to film our little low-budget horror project. From the outside, the motel looked exactly like the kind of place horror stories are born. The roof sagged in places, windows were boarded or cracked, and the desert wind made the doors rattle like bones tapping together. Inside, the floor was littered with papers, hundreds of them, like someone had thrown out boxes of old mail. At first, I thought they were just scraps left behind when the motel was still in business. But after a while, curiosity got the better of us. We started picking them up. They weren't junk mail. They were letters. Real letters. Handwritten. Yellowed with age. Dating back to the 70s. They started out sounding ordinary, even polite. Little notes addressed to dozens of different people. But the further we read, the darker they got. By the 5th or 6th page, it was clear the man writing them wasn't well. His words unraveled into paranoid rambling. Over and over, he wrote about them. How they were watching him, how they were in the walls. The handwriting itself seemed to collapse along with his sanity, starting neat and controlled, then slanting wildly across the page, jagged and erratic. I remember holding one letter and feeling my skin crawl. You could almost feel the writer's panic bleeding through the ink. Outside, behind the motel, there was an old shipping container. Big, rusted, sun-bleached. The words, "Keep out," had been spray-painted across the side in giant red letters. Naturally, that only made us more curious. Someone found a hole along the edge and reached in. What they pulled out wasn't junk. It was documents. Official-looking ones. I still remember the header. Government typeface. Something from the VA. The letter inside said the man who wrote all those rambling notes had unknowingly been a test subject in military experiments. Hallucinogenic substances. Drugs. Suddenly, it all made a terrible kind of sense. This wasn't just some random madman scribbling his fears. He'd been broken by something larger and left here to rot. But what disturbed me the most wasn't the letters or even the container. It was one room in the motel, a room no one was allowed to enter. The windows were boarded up, the door nailed and barricaded shut. When we asked, we were told to stay away. But you could smell it, even walking past, a stench so thick it caught in your throat. The only way I can describe it is death. It was the worst smell I have ever encountered. Not just rot, not just mildew, but something that made your stomach twist and your head spin. To this day, I still wonder what was left in that room, and whether the man who wrote those letters ever really left at all.
Me and my roommate, let's call him Steven, had thrown a pretty big party for his 30th birthday. There was cake, balloons, weed, booze, the works. The apartment was full of noise, laughter, music, the smell of food and beer, people talking over each other. It felt like the kind of party you remember for years. At some point in the night, one of Steven's friends made him an offer, $100 if he went to the casino to gamble with him. Steven didn't even hesitate. "Hell yeah," he said. They started getting ready, grabbing jackets, checking wallets. Slowly, everyone else began filtering out too. The noise died down. The front door closed again and again, until, finally, the apartment was silent. And just like that, it was just me. I tidied up a bit, putting cups in the trash, straightening things. The air still smelled faintly of alcohol and smoke. A couple of balloons drifted lazily near the ceiling, the strings swaying. I turned off all the lights except for the one in my bedroom, got into my nightclothes, and sat on my bed with the TV on low for background noise. That's when I first heard it. A faint, dragging sound. Somewhere in the apartment. Not loud, just enough to make me notice. Then maybe 15 seconds later, a soft plop, like something small and weighted hitting the floor. Drag, plop, drag, plop. It went on like that for maybe 20, 30 minutes. I got up and checked around. Nothing looked out of place. The fish tank bubbled quietly in the living room. For a while I convinced myself maybe the sound was coming from that. A filter, a shifting rock, something harmless. I went back to my room. The noise continued. Drag, plop, drag, plop. After a while it became impossible to ignore. The sound was coming from the hallway, closer now. Then I saw it. Movement by my bedroom door caught my eye. One of the balloons from the party, a big silver number 0, was sitting at the threshold of my door. I hadn't seen it there a moment ago. It was just there, like it had slid in silently while I wasn't looking. I froze. I stared at it, trying to figure out how it had gotten there. There wasn't a breeze, the air was still. Then, as if on cue, it moved, slowly. The plastic weight at the bottom dragged across the floor about half a foot with a soft scratching noise. The balloon floated up just a little, maybe 6 inches, then drifted forward about a foot and settled down again with a tiny plop. Then it just sat there, bobbing slightly. A few minutes later it did it again. This wasn't just drifting on air currents. It was moving with a weird kind of purpose, like something was pulling it. Each time it crept a little closer to my bed. My heart was pounding. I stayed frozen, staring as this shiny balloon, a harmless party decoration, crossed my bedroom like it had a mind of its own. Drag, float, plop, closer and closer, until it reached the foot of my bed. Then it tilted slightly forward, leaning in toward my face. That's when I jumped up. I scrambled backward until my back hit the wall, staring at it, my skin crawling. Goosebumps prickled up my arms. My brain raced for explanations. Air conditioning, static, some trick of pressure in the apartment. But nothing made sense. There was no airflow, the windows were closed, the door was shut, and this balloon had somehow traveled from the living room, through the hallway, into my bedroom, and right up to my bed over the course of an hour. It just hovered there, like it was watching me. I've never felt so unsettled by something so small. It's one of those moments where your rational brain is telling you you're being ridiculous, but your gut knows something isn't right. That night, my gut won. I stayed awake for hours after that, staring at that balloon until the sun started to come up. Even then, it sat there like nothing had happened. A normal balloon in a normal room. But I'll never forget the way it moved, slowly and deliberately, through my apartment and up to my face. Many goosebumps were formed that night.